A warm welcome to our global audience. We just want to welcome you this afternoon to Namibia's celebration of the World Intellectual Property Day 2021. Namibia will celebrate this World Intellectual Property Day in style. We have a panel of experts that ranges from entrepreneurship, brand management, intellectual property, systems knowledge management, and so forth and so forth. So I just want to invite all our audience to follow us, to invite your world, your network to come and hear the voice of Namibia on intellectual property. The theme, of course, is IP and SMEs taking your ideas to the market. So with me, and that is why you should be tuned in, is because we have, as part of our panel, Velmai Krieger, who is one of the Namibian's leading female entrepreneurs in the field of computer programming. She is an executive at the Namibia Chambers of Commerce and Industry at the Windhoek branch. Velmai has a vast experience in programming and has worked for one of the major banks in Namibia as a programmer. She has worked with government agencies, ministries, state-owned enterprises or public enterprises as we know it now, and retailers. So we just want to welcome you, and we're looking forward to hear the views of the entrepreneurs.
Thank you.
Secondly, we have with us Margaret Gustavo. Margaret Gustavo is a strategy and branding executive at one of our latest public enterprise, the Namibia Investment Promotion and Development Board. Margaret is a communications and branding powerhouse who is passionate about Namibia and the African continent, with a vision to form part of Africa's transition to global visibility and leadership. Margaret is especially keen on building nation brands. She holds a bachelor's degree in commerce and master's in business leadership. Margaret is passionate about changing the social, economic, and psychological landscape of Namibia through the power of brands, communication, and strategy. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you.
And then we have a gentleman in our midst. Namibia is a zebra-style land. Moses Malatendi Moses. He is an expert on intellectual property, one of the few that I've privileged to know, and knowledge systems management. He currently heads the knowledge management, IP, and technology transfer department at the National Commission on Research, Science, and Technology. He is responsible for the formulation of institutional policies and facilitate the development of national research, science, technology, and innovation platforms. Moses holds a master's degree in intellectual property studies, also one of the few that I was privileged to know, from the Africa University in Zimbabwe, and a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from the Namibian University of Science and Technology. He also holds a postgraduate degree in intellectual property law from the University of South Africa. Moses has extensive experience in the areas of culture, copyright, and other intellectual property rights, as well as knowledge systems, and has worked for the Communication Regulatory Authority, Ndas, to mention but a few. Lastly, he is the first CEO of the Namibian Society of Composer and Authors of Music that we know as NASCAM. Welcome, sir. And then, of course, lastly, but certainly not the least, I want to introduce to you our host for this celebration and this panel discussion, and that is Mrs. Vivian Lk Kashiwanga. Ms. Kashiwanga is my boss. She is the CEO of the Business and Intellectual Property Authority. She holds a Master of Laws, cum laude, in International Trade, Investment, and Business Law from the University of Western Cape, South Africa, in collaboration with Washington College of Law, the American University in Washington, D.C. She also has postgraduate diploma in economics for competition law, and baccalaureate juris degree, B Juris, from the University of Namibia, as well as Bachelor of Laws degree from the same university. She's also an admitted legal practitioner in the Republic of Namibia. Vivian has over 17 years of leadership and work experience across international, regional, and national organizations and entities from both the public and private sectors. She was awarded as a Mo Ibrahim Fellow in 2015. Ma'am, you are loaded. She serves on various boards. We won't be able to list all of them. We don't have that time. But I'll just mention that she is the vice chairperson of the Communications Regulatory Authority. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you.
Now I am going to turn to our facilitator because we need to be able to draw out the expertise and the knowledge from our panelists. And to do that for us, there is no better suited person than Oket Jansen, who is a communication strategist with 18 years experience in mainstream media, strategic communications, stakeholder engagement, and strategy development. He's currently a holder of Master of Law degree in International Communication at a university in USA and is a PhD candidate of the University of Namibia, focusing on access to information within Southern Africa. Oket has a keen interest in media law, policy, and regulations. His experience in both corporate and government sectors is impressive. He worked for the Namibian Broadcasting Corporation, One Africa Television, National Commission on Research, Science, and Technology, the Namibian Judiciary, and currently heads the Department of Marketing, Corporate Communications, and Client Management Services at our institution, BIPA. You have been around Oket. Oket understands the importance of driving key messages, be it on an external public or the media. He boasts an impressive relationship profile with media practitioners across the sub-region. That's why we hired him. So with that, we invite you to stay tuned and enjoy yourself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back to our viewers from across the globe. As earlier said, today is a special day as we're celebrating part of the World Intellectual Property Day that was celebrated on the 26th of April 2021. So this day, as the previous speaker said, has been celebrated for the past 11 years and was started in the year 2000 by the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO. Namibia is no stranger to the celebrations in intellectual property. Since the establishment of the Business and Intellectual Property Authority in 2016, we've been celebrating Intellectual Property Day on a yearly basis. The panel that is here with me today has vast experience on intellectual property, on business, and as well as in brand marketing. What we'll talk about today is the theme for this year's World IP Day, and that is IP and SMEs. And we hope that there's a lot of SMEs, entrepreneurs, innovators that are tuned in today, and that will take at least some pointers with you to ensure that you are able to protect your IP and take your idea to market. Welcome once again. So let's start discussing the topic of IP and SMEs, or IP and entrepreneurship. I think what our viewers would like to know today is really, what is the importance of intellectual property for any country or for any economy? Ms. Kashiwanga, you are the CEO of BIPA, but you are also an IP and law expert. What would you say is the benefit to any country on this important topic?
Thank you for the question and the opportunity to share. From my perspective, I think the importance of intellectual property is that in any dealings that we engage in as individuals, we tend to thrive or drive towards standing out. And when you innovate, it would normally relate to a new thing or improving something. So the whole concept of innovation is around products and processes. Now, what intellectual property does is it would transform that innovation into an intangible asset, which has value. Because when you produce something, you would want to benefit from it, or you would want to have it to leverage and to be at some competitive level, or contribute, whether it's to health issues through the science, or you develop machinery that brings solutions. So I think intellectual property is very important in that it transforms your innovation into an asset that has value depending on how you market it and bring it to the market. And therefore, it's important for us to create that platform and the regulatory framework where those who have ideas, who innovate or create things, get the protection that they need to enjoy that. You have that monopoly that you get as the first developer of something. So at least you have to have that opportunity to benefit from your innovation before others can start using it at either a lower price or at a set cost.
So would it be correct for me to say that to really understand the value of IP, there needs to be a robust legal framework in place in any country so that IP can be appreciated, but so that ideas and the expression thereof, as well as products, can be protected? And what is the current framework in Namibia, Ms. Kashiwanga and Mr. Moses?
So maybe, sorry, Mr. Moses, to take off is that I think it's very important to have that robust intellectual property protection framework. It is good for the country, for your people themselves, but it's also good for your dealings with other countries. When we look at it from a perspective of dealing with other countries, if your intellectual property protection regime is strong and robust, it then allows for others to transfer, for example, technology, new technology that is developed elsewhere into the country. Also, it then boosts your attraction of foreign direct investment, because the investors have that assurance that in your country, their ideas, their products that they develop will have protection, and you won't have people who either imitate them or create some other lower quality product. So it gives assurance then to other countries to be able to invest here. And for your own people, there is value to it, to say, I've got my idea, I can take it out there, nobody can steal it. They actually have to get permission from me or the innovation to be able to use it. And therefore, I can reap benefits from it, the profits that I get from it. And that is why it's beneficial both to your local people and then to your country as an attractive avenue for foreign direct investors.
Correct. Mr. Moses, you were also instrumental in the establishment of some regulations and policies in as far as it relates to intellectual property. What would you say is the importance of it to the country?
Thank you, moderator. Good afternoon, viewers, listeners. Vivian put it rightly. I'll just add a little bit. The importance of IP to any given economy or any country is that you don't want to be relying on other countries for products and services. Why that is the case right now in Namibia and other developing countries is that we are not inventing enough. We are not innovating enough. The invention part, in my view, I'm not trying to discourage SME and other creators out there, but the invention part is almost towards the end of it. What we are now trying to do as a developing country is to innovate around those existing products and services. So therefore, if you have an IP, a robust, as it was earlier mentioned, a robust IP regime in your country, you are on the safe side because you are also encouraged through that regime, you are encouraged to create because you are assured that whatever you are creating is protected, and there are frameworks to manage this and to inform you on how to commercialize and reap the benefit thereof. The other part that I wanted to touch on is what Vivian mentioned earlier regarding the legal framework in the country. It's one thing to have a legal framework, but it's quite another to have it working. So if you can leverage on both, then you are good to go. Because if you have all your acts in place, all your programs, national programs that are speaking to IP in place, but you don't have the implementers, you don't have anybody to educate the masses out there, it's as good as dead. Therefore, a legal framework in the country should go hand in hand with education, so that the people we are talking to today and in future, and those that we have been talking to in the past, should actually be educated as to what to do, when to do it, with whom to do it, and how to do it. Then we will be speaking of a success in terms of IP regimes and IP mechanisms in the country.
Exactly. Very interesting. But I'd like to pause here for a while. I'd just like to welcome our viewers, the ones that have just joined us. We're having a panel discussion today in celebration of the 2021 World Intellectual Property Day. The theme for this year is IP and SMEs, how to take your product and idea to market. I'm joined by a panel of experts in the fields of law, IP, brand marketing, and business. Just before this, Mr. Moses was talking about the level of invention and how it has reached its peak, and now we only have to innovate. Now the question, perhaps from a marketing business perspective, what is the test for innovation then? So if we're saying, are we really innovating, what is the test for innovation? At what point do I say, I'm actually innovating and not just operating? Ms. Gustavo?
I just wanted to add, or if I may, to the first question. I'm very interested in brands and how brands create value for people, and I'm going to touch on your question.
Yes.
And what I notice is, I think what IP can add to economies is, if you look at first world countries, let's take Germany, for instance. And then I just looked at, one day I Googled a long time ago, what are some of the top brands that Germany exports? It's BMW, it's Mercedes-Benz, it's Porsche, it's all these top brands. And then I found Jacobs Kruning coffee. It's in the top 100. I was very surprised. I actually thought it was a South African brand. And so imagine they send those products out of their country all over the world. They get foreign currency into their country, and that's how these countries continuously are positioned as top countries, because we make the product for our nation, but we sell it all over the world. So you've got these markets. It provides the manufacturers within these countries new markets, bigger markets, and they're not just selling to how many people are in Germany. You look at the United States, if you look at the top 10 brands in the world, there are a lot of them that are American. Amazon is always in the top. Google is in the top. And so you've got all these brands, so it does add value. And so I guess what Ms. Vivian and Moses were saying now is that as we are developing this legal framework, you are protected. And I love how they always talk about the American dream. I know I'm maybe focusing on America, but just as a good example that we are also, that we can relate to. You've got this American dream. And I remember there was this South African young boy who went to America, and he was brilliant in science. And the American government gave him the green card, stay in our country, add value here, because we're going to leverage that to build our nation. Whatever he came up with. But you see, that value and that IP that this boy came up with is adding value to America instead of adding it back to South Africa where he actually came from.
Exactly.
So we're exporting a lot of our ideas because maybe the legal framework is not in place or what have you. So let's talk about innovation and how do you know. I think Vivian, described it well. She said either you come up with something new or you improve on something. So if we look at our country now, I think in preparation as we were having a chat, we said that where are we now as a country? I guess we're at that place where many times I think there's two economies or two camps at the moment. One is we just need to survive. Correct. Many people have lost their jobs. Many people are really on the streets. They don't have, I mean, even now, we put out some ads and we saw that 1,700, impressions on this ad online in 1 hour. I mean, maybe for the rest of the world it doesn't, it means nothing. But for us, it shows that there's a lot of people who are highly qualified, who are looking for jobs that they can take. So what do you normally do? In a case like that, I just need to survive. What Auntie Margaret will do is she'll just make vet cook and go sell, because I need to take my kids through school. I need to make sure, I can go to fruit and veg or wherever, buy 5 bananas and sell them wherever it is. So we normally see so this camp is just basically copying and pasting, but it's a survival thing. It doesn't mean, and I think once you get out of that, then you can start innovating because it creates, you don't have that pressure of taking care of your basic need. And on the other one, you've got a lot of young people in this country who are driving this economy in quietly under the ground, and I think this discussion adds so much value because now they know. Vivian, I'm hoping that next week it's going to be busy because people are going to come in and registering their trademarks, and I think, and that's when we know, because we start seeing BIPA has got people registering their trademarks, and on top of it, we start seeing new services, new products in the economy, and even in our businesses where we are, you start seeing young people adding value, they're adding to the conversation, and they're actually coming up with ideas. Whereas, somebody was saying to me, you old people, you just are stuck in your ways and what have you. But actually, if we sit and we listen in a room, what normally happens at strategic planning sessions, we are innovating, we're finding new ways of improving so that we can come to a better end. And where we are as a country right now, I think it's just knowing that difference. How do we take these people to a place where they can start innovating? And maybe these guys are the ones that are creating these opportunities to take many people, with them to be able to move the country forward.
Correct.
Yeah.
Actually makes me think of the First Lady's philosophy on the first and the second economy, and it really speaks to that. So from a business perspective, NCCI, you are an executive member, there are a lot of businesses that just want to become or keep afloat, be sustainable so that they are able to pay salaries, and they don't innovate. What are some of the challenges in the business community with regards to innovation?
Thank you, Okat. Relevance now in our current economic environment, taking the relevance of BIPA and IP now to the business environment. The impact of COVID has been really serious on our business environment. And what also flowed out of that impact was the fact that some people, some businesses came up actually due to this pressure with some innovative ideas to sustain their business or to diversify into new business.
Yes.
Some new businesses have been formed, and through the vehicle of BIPA. Now, I believe we have a very good awareness of IP in our country. What we could work on is, once we have done our registration of our IP, to realize the potency of the idea or the patent or the trademark behind what we registered for the IP. I believe that can be part of recovering our current economy, because as Ms. Vivian mentioned, that you can come and take, BIPA can say, let us help you to turn your idea into an idea that goes to market. That's why you register at BIPA. You want your idea or your thought to make money for you. So I believe BIPA is very instrumental to SMEs, to entrepreneurs, to individuals with business thoughts, to take your idea or thought, to turn it into a credible, tradable commodity, so that the potency that is in your idea can contribute to stimulating our economy to recover. Because now we have potent ideas, but we need to take them through this process. So, BIPA offers a secure environment, so to speak, for taking your idea to the next level. So I believe that entrepreneurs and SMEs at NCCI, we are an advocacy body.
Yes.
We come out with voicing advocacy on behalf of businesses. When a business joins, you need to be registered, you need to be a legal business entity. So I believe that our businesses really have got potential to recover from where we are if we can work together and realize the stimulus that can happen through the processes of BIPA.
Innovation, correct. For those that have just joined us, we are talking about IP and SMEs. Now, for those that are wondering what IP is, I mean, it's an acronym. It stands for intellectual property. So what is intellectual property? Intellectual property is your creation, the creation of the mind, be it an idea, be it a product. You create it, so you retain that right, but you must also ensure that you protect that right. And that is what we are talking about. As young entrepreneurs, as innovators, as creative people, how do you ensure that the idea that you have is protected and you can take that idea to market and commercialize it? And I think that has just been touched on. Now, how do we protect these ideas? We protect the ideas through what we spoke about earlier, a legal framework BIPA has in place, or Namibia has in place, the Industrial Property Act of 2012, that protects patents, industrial designs, utility models, trademarks, but we also have the creative side of businesses. And that is where the Copyright and Neighboring Rights Protection Act comes in. These are now the creative ideas, like photographers that take photos, musicians or artists, software designers, and so forth. And one of the questions that, believe it or not, that I get very most often is people asking me, so how do I protect my idea? So can one in Namibia, can you just protect an idea, or must it be the expression or the creation of that idea into a tangible product?
So I mean, you are correct, because it's the latter part of the statement, in that it's the turning the idea into a tangible, whether it's a product or process. But I wanted to just comment, taking into account what was said by the previous speaker, is that, you know, when you have the idea, even if you come and protect the idea now, that's the beginning. That is the preeminent stage of your product or process. Now, when we talk about SMEs, what is important is to look at the cycle of taking this innovation and bringing it into the market and looking at issues of after-sale, aftercare, when it has entered the market. So the whole concept of empowering SMEs is the role that BIPA must play in terms of the intellectual property space, of starting with that innovation and then guiding the SME as to how to get to the stage where it is now when they are competing in the market. So there are different ways. So we're talking about IP, but you also have to think about the type of sector or industry that this SME is operating in, or the type of product that we are talking, because you also have to choose at what stage do I bring in intellectual property rights? Because, for example, if you have something that needs protection via a patent, it can be very tricky, because the minute you register a patent, then your innovation goes into the public. Now, then it becomes a little bit difficult for you to protect, say, the product or the process that you want to develop through the innovation. So sometimes you really have to, the whole idea is, as intellectual property regulators and experts, is you have to be able to help the SME for them to choose the right, they call it appropriability mechanism, which is the way through which they can take the innovation and bring it into the market. So for example, for a patent or something that is in that area, they would say, Maybe at the beginning of the stage, instead of getting to apply for a patent, you protect it through secrecy in the process. Then eventually when the product is ready to be launched, then you get to the patent, because now it can go into the public, but you have the protection for the 10 years. Other products, you have ideas where SMEs don't have the capital to really go through the whole process of patent, of registering the IP, developing the product. So what they do is they become like an incubation center where they would do the innovation. They can team up with big and well-established industry players. Look, for example, in Namibia, like with the brand example that Margaret indicated. Look at Namibia breweries. I think there are many small SMEs that benefit from that brand. Yes. And it's that whole idea where, as an SME, I don't necessarily have to be the owner of that IP. I can actually be the incubator of the IP, or I can in-license an IP that belongs to a bigger firm because I focus in a certain, in the sector, maybe a certain area of production. So what we have to really do when we speak about SMEs is to assist them on how they can walk through this process of innovation, get their products into the market, become competitive, and have the aftercare and so on. But it's all the different stages of the protection and the, like branding. Branding comes into, so if I have an innovation, doesn't mean that I already have a company. Yeah. Once I have now gotten to developing this specific product, I have to think, okay, now if I want to stand out there, I can have a patent, no problem. But what distinguishes my product from everybody else's? Then I will go, I can register a trademark, I'll have a specific brand that goes hand in hand with this product, and it will describe the product in its uniqueness. And that would attract the product on its own. So we have good examples in Namibia. As I said, Namibia breweries, you have the pastas, Namib mills. So we have it. We just have to leverage from there to see how did they get to where they are, and how can we also use them to assist others and ourselves to get there.
So while we're on that topic, Moses, let's talk about, so an SME has an idea. They came to BIPA for initial registration, or they are advised to, instead of registering the IP, to incubate it or to license it. Let's talk about this sellability, transferability, or just overall commercialization of IPs and how that is important.
Before I attend to that question, allow me 30 seconds to go back to, I'm not intending to derail the whole process, but something that we didn't touch on, allow me to expand on what Margaret said. On the question of when do I know that I'm actually innovating? For the sake of our audience, our specific audience, the SME, of course, you have different SME role players. One with a staff complement of 58 employees, but they still call them themselves SMEs. But then you have those, a two-man show, a two-women show, and all that. I would like to speak to those. You know that you are innovating when you do things differently from the rest. Because innovation is about that. It's improving on what you find. If we used to read a book like this, what can you do so that we read it? You know, looking up.
Yes.
So,
yes.
If you can attend to that and you are doing things differently, then you know that you are innovating. And the other measure is when you have people storming to your products and services, ignoring the others or bypassing the others who are doing the same thing.
You know you are doing something right.
Then you know that you are innovating.
Yes.
Let me give you two quick examples. We have those ladies that are selling fruit and veg. Or kapana, for example, the one that was referred to earlier. Why don't you put those fruit and vegetables in a well-packed, a package, well-designed package, and you write something on there, just to indicate to the people, this fruit is from where, is collected in this manner, is packed by who. Attach yourself to names that are already well-known. Then you attract more people. If you are selling kapana, you can actually consider people who don't have time to sit there and bend their fingers and stuff. So you put up something to say, you can also take away. The only takeaways we know are established businesses in town and some part of Katura. But you can also become a takeaway in that manner by innovating around how people sell kapana.
Yeah,
Now,
just before we go on to the question of commercialization, I would just like to say we still have another 50 minutes on this discussion. If you have any questions, please post it on our feed. Herbert, we heard you. Of course, patents require the element of novelty, which means that sometimes instead of doing a patent, you can also register a utility model, but it's always good to have advice. Let's talk about the commercial aspect of owning patents, especially for SMEs, shortly.
Yeah, maybe patents, for our specific audience, patent becomes a bigger aspect of IP. Maybe we should concentrate on the products that are already there and the services that we're already providing. How to commercialize? You actually, we have BIPA here. That's the first point to start, because you cannot commercialize if you are not protected. The first point is to seek for protection. Once you acquire that protection, then you can commercialize. But there are a lot of elements attached to commercialization. Sometimes you want to commercialize your products, but you don't have the capacity. And if you try to commercialize without sufficient capacity, you actually end up destroying your trademark that you have just started, because already the products that will come out of a commercialization process that is not well designed, that's not well thought through, it will actually destroy your trademark. You therefore want to do the right thing the right way. So once you come from BIPA, try to consult and see how you can approach this commercialization aspect by doing it bit by bit. Because if you go on a bigger scale, you might miss some of the important elements that will then give a bad reputation to your products and services.
And again, it brings us back to Margaret's earlier point of these international brands.
Yeah.
They've not spurred up just like that. It was a systematic process of ensuring that you first, and that's where I want to come to, you first get brand recognition, you position your brand, you ensure that you have a value proposition for your products, and that's how you sell it. So if we're talking about IP and branding, especially in the context of trademarks, why is it important for entrepreneurs to concentrate on their brand and the value that their brand can have for either the brand or the products that might be innovative enough to protect?
I think just to start off with what is a brand is, I guess, the value that we give it. And I use that example all the time, and I think it was Mr. Ogilvy who said, if everybody in the world died today, brands would also die because we create them. And the owner of the brand normally puts something together to create a perception in our minds of either value or no value. So like we talk about personal brands. What are you known for? How are you known in the market? So when you came for a job interview and everybody knows, this one drinks a lot, so we don't know anymore whether we can give them the job. So there's a perception, that's your brand, that's how people know you. 10 to 1, you probably won't get the job. So I think it's starting off there. Brands add a lot of value. There's one benefit of building a brand that I've always held on to. It commands a premium. Brands command a premium. You'll notice in the shop, you'll find pasta polana, and then you'll find everything else. Then you find all the imported brands that are made from durum wheat from the Europes that we don't necessarily have here in abundance. And those brands are obviously more at a premium price, but in their countries, they're probably not as great. But here, we've got pasta polana, and then we've got pasta la vita. Premium at the price, you get better margin for it as a brand owner. But that also didn't happen overnight. It's starting this brand, putting your brand identity together, positioning your brand, as you rightfully said, and then being able to consistently apply what you promise to the consumer. So say, for instance, we promise that we will deliver in 24 hours a service, for instance. Many of us, we say we do it well week 1. Week 2, we are okay. Week 3, we're making excuses. Your brand will suffer for it. What you notice is Amazon basically says 24 hours, you'll get your delivery. So what you put behind your business to make sure that that 24 hours is realized before you make that promise is important. So we worked with a client once who told us, yeah, we want a customer service charter. And we said, even if you tell me you are able to deliver this in 1 day, we want to see your processes that allow you to deliver in 1 day. Rather, don't make that promise and just say, come to our offices, whatever, and you'll get the... And I think number 2, let's take, for example, Porsche and the VW Touareg. They're made in the same factory. It's basically the same engine. But Porsche, you pay like twice as much as what you would pay for a Touareg. I mean, if you look in Windhoek, for instance, coffee. When we buy coffee, coffee in the shop, why is coffee cheap? We buy the big tin. But that big tin, Jacobs is a small tin like that. It's the same price, but there's more value in Jacobs because many people believe it's a better product. And then when you go to Slowtown and you go to Two Beards, then you start paying for a cup of coffee, almost the same price as what you would pay for a coffee, a little big tin or whatever the case, or half a big tin or whatever the case may be. And so let me, to showcase the importance of that, there was a gentleman called George Washington Carver who had an idea of how to make different products from the peanut. So he made soap. He made different kinds of foods. He had 300 ideas of what to do with the peanut. He didn't register one trademark. He could have left value for his kids to leverage off. Other people came, they took it, and they ran with it. If you look at Apple, Steve Jobs was the visionary. Wozniak was the guy who actually put it together. He was the engineer.
Yes.
And I mean, if Steve without Wozniak meant nothing, but they partnered together, so the value comes in. You put in, you decide, who am I? This identity. And then you put in, what is it that I'm offering the market that is different, that is relevant, and that is credible? Brands are built on these 3 pillars. And I think Vivian rightfully said it. The differentiation becomes very important.
I was just going to touch on it. I think Vivian and Moses, why is differentiating? We speak about value, but differentiation is equally as important. Why would that be the case?
The reason why it's important is because you'll find, okay, I almost mentioned the country here, I shouldn't do it. So you'll find in a market, say for instance you go to a normal open market and there's bananas for days. And then one person says to you, these bananas come from Cape Town or from, let's say, Israel, at the river, Jordan or whatever the river is. And then you're selling it perhaps in a market with just Christians. Guess where all the Christians are going to go? They're going to go buy from that guy because it was bought. There's a certain significance to it. And then the quality aspects, that's where the differentiation. So you either differentiate in your processes, you differentiate in your quality of your product, you differentiate in the way you get your product to market, you differentiate in your marketing and your marketing message, you differentiate in your packaging, how you put it together. So there's different ways of differentiating it. But if I see coffee, just coffee, no label, no nothing on the shelf,
what
you just take something, it's like,
yes.
But then, now there's Jacobs, there's Recoffee, there's Slowtown, there's all of the stuff is on the shelf. And based on who created that awareness with me, I will tend to want to buy that product because I've experienced it, somebody's told me about it, and in Namibia, we love word of mouth. If Velmi tells me to buy the Peugeot, I'll probably buy the Peugeot because Velma and I have a relationship, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I trust her judgment, and I'll probably go buy that car.
So now we're talking really about value. We're talking about taking it to market and how you can protect it. Even the stages of protection is important because you wouldn't want to preempt your IP. Do we believe that our SMEs and our businesses are well aware of the value of intellectual property rights in their creations, in their businesses, from a business perspective?
I believe that we need to carry across this relevance. Especially, we all know that contexts have changed a lot for relevance after COVID. The same factors are still highly relevant, but contexts have changed. Current reality has changed a lot. Commercial value is at the heart. It's the heartbeat for SME, and this is where I would like to speak about. Now, once you have registered your trademark or your patent or your copyright or your design, when you register it, the reason why you register is because of the fear factor or the risk factor of somebody else is going to make money with my idea. So you register it because of the potential value that is in that idea. So if myself, as an innovator now I have a potential value on it. It means that my expression, which is what you register, carries a value. It carries a weight. So now for this tangible value to be recorded, is there a way that we can then, once you have registered and you have expressed, you have documented, or in some cases you have practical examples of your patent, you might even have gone to the extent of putting certification, you have NSI, which is integral to patents. And now, how can we attach value to that, commercial value to that? Because at the end of the day, this is why you go to a secure environment to register. As an SME, you want to strengthen your balance sheet. So if I now just have this thought and idea, the usual route is I can go to a funder with my business plan. I can say, this is my business plan and this is what can happen. Can BIPA add that credibility or that weight to say we have evaluated? There's been an evaluation towards the value of what has been registered. And this is the value. So, SMEs, we always at some stage speak about funds. It's part of that process, going to market. So if I can present this to the panel, what are your thoughts
Maybe
around
quickly, because of time, Vivian, what Valmey has mentioned, is that possible within our current framework? And is it practical to value an IP at that early stage?
So in developed countries, they have mechanisms to value IPs. To the extent that some of the IPs are even being traded on your stock markets and so on. So they have a way to determine the value. Sometimes they use actuaries and so on to really come to the actual value. But in developing countries like ours, we don't have those expertise. But of course, we can always, so BIPA's vision is to go out there, to raise awareness, to assist SMEs, for example, like that, to team them up, because we have partnerships with other established IP regulators who actually have programs in place how they work with their SMEs to help them achieve that. I speak, like today, I'm doing a course with the Intellectual Property Organization of Canada, where they do executive management training for the registrars of intellectual property. And these are the things that they discuss, how they have set up their linkages with SMEs and what they are doing for them. So it's possible. You can do that because you need to, it's the value that you attach to your product or process that you would, it is, remember the IP is an intangible asset. Then say your product becomes then the output thereof. And it would be, when you measure what is the price of this IP, it depends on what is the value of your intangible asset, how much did it cost you to actually develop this whole product and process, and then you add them up and that's how you come to the price. So there are mechanisms. I think we just have to set ourselves as we move forward in our drive to really take hands with the SMEs so that we can bring them where they need to be. But also for me, Namibia, it's very difficult as to what is an SME. There is an assessment that is done in terms of the Ministry of Industrialization and Trade, where it either looks at the number of employees or is it the turnover? Yes.
Yeah.
But remember that when we speak to the public, there are people, as you give the good examples of Kapana, is it an SME? If you speak about the issue of differentiation, if you go to Katutura or anywhere in this country, you find people, they have a car wash, a shebeen, a barber. They are next to each other. And my question is, how do they make money? Or how do I come and choose, I'll go to Margaret, I'll go to Moses, or Valmin, how? Yes. And what has happened is that it's always about who you know. Word of mouth, as you correctly said. But there are others who have innovated. There are people who nowadays render car wash services by coming to your house. There are people who do the ladies' braiding and hair. They don't have a physical hair salon. They are on Instagram. As you said, that the youth, they are so innovative. My son would come and tell me, Mommy, I want to do that. I said, but how do we know where to find? No, 1, 2, 3 Instagram. Somebody arrives at my house, they render the service, and I'm like, wow. I still go to the hair salon. So These things are happening, but I think us as a regulator, I can assure you that going forward, the question that we keep on asking ourselves is, yes, we have the laws. We are now setting up the tribunal. We have skills that we are capacitating the IP stream with. But how do we participate in the process of adding value to these innovations and the IPs that we have? How do we ensure that when people leave BIPA, they would say, you know, actually I know what to do with this thing that I have registered. Actually, I know that if I have an infringement, where do I go best? So we need to do more, and that is the actual implementation of the IP framework that we have. And we have to do it, because if you have something but it's not tangible, people can't see the value that it's adding to the process, then you just as well, a guardman at the gate. So that is really our drive that we are going to take up going forward. And even for us, we say we have registered IPs, but the question is, how can we increase this? Because we need to do more, and more is through awareness raising, taking out the word so that people can understand what are IPs. People think IPs are these very complex. Some are complex, like the patents, because it's more mechanical and machinery. But others are simple, like with COVID now. If you look at the role that IP plays, had it not been for the flexibilities that are there, we would not have vaccines, because countries like India would not be able to produce these vaccines because they have IP protection from the owners of the, like your, Pfizer's and so on. Now you at least can have parallel licensing or so that we can produce these things and they come cheaper here.
So there are indeed benefits.
No, there are many benefits, like I said.
So just to, for our viewers, thank you for, we are aware of your questions, and we will attend to it in the last 10 minutes and try to attempt. We still have about 30 minutes on our live stream. We are talking about intellectual property and SME and taking your ideas to market. So we focus now on a more local market. Let's talk about international market and jurisdiction. So now I have designed a table, for instance. I've registered it. I've protected it as a, let's say, a utility model because it's a bit different than anything else. Now I want to export this into an international market. South Africa, Ghana, the US. What do I stand to gain and what do I stand to lose? What are the challenges and what are the opportunities? Probably first from a legal perspective in terms of IP, and then we can look at a commercial commodity perspective.
Okay.
Very shortly.
So maybe just briefly, in terms of the way that the protection of IPs have evolved, at the international level, for example, with WIPO, you can designate a number of countries to protect that specific IP. Like your patent, if you go under the Madrid, then you would go and you would file with WIPO, but you then designate different countries. And your filing with WIPO, you can also do it from the office in your country, like you come here to BIPA, you file for a patent, you say, I designate Germany.
So just what does, for our viewers, what does designation mean?
Okay, designation means that if somebody in that country uses the IP that is protected there, then you can take action against them.
So basically your IP is protected in those specific countries?
Yes.
Okay.
But if you don't designate a country, your IP can be used, but you won't be able to enforce the protection that you normally would do. So it makes it easier in that you no longer have to go from country A, B, and C, and especially if you want to do exports. Now you just go and you have that. So it's simplified. Also, you get the actual calculator on the WIPO website to show how much it would cost you if you designate so and so. We also have the regional office of ARIPO, where they manage the Harare protocol and others. So it has been simplified, where countries really work together in order to ensure that the protection cuts across all areas of this globe where you want it to be.
So Moses, thank you very much, Vivian. My table now is registered, is protected as an industrial design in Namibia. I want to export it to these countries that I've mentioned. At what point would I know how to do it? And as what I need to register it in other countries? Should it be at a similar level as industrial design, or how would that, for instance, work?
Thank you. That's a good question for our viewers out there. And if I may speak from the research point of view, research and development for that matter, I will advise the I would advise you, if you are the creator of this table or these products in question, to put in a little bit of research activities. Because it doesn't help designating Zambia, where you can sell this round-shaped table or triangle-shaped table, if there's any like that. If you haven't been to Zambia, or none of your representatives or advisors have been to Zambia, because you might designate Zambia thinking people close to Katima will buy it.
And there's no market.
And there's no market. So the best thing to do first is to conduct a little bit of research, something that we are always very reluctant to do. But it's very important to put in a little bit, invest a bit in research and see whether by designating Zambia, Mozambique, Angola, your product will actually sell in that country. So the research part is very important. Yeah, but again, adding to that, once you have conducted your market research and you are satisfied with your findings, you should then try to team up with another entrepreneur in that country. Because if you don't have anybody to look after what you are putting there, the law alone cannot really help you up to the maximum. You can have somebody who can be looking out and say, okay, now we were selling this in Kitwe. But Kitwe, there are two other entrepreneurs who are very, very good. They speak the local language. Yours is just there, written in English or in Tamaranama. People don't understand. Why don't we move to this other area? Your person there, your partner, linkage is very important in this international market. Correct, you must have somebody there to speak for you, to look out for you, and then you can do this with ease.
Let's look at it from a commercial perspective. Let's look at it, for instance, in terms of market share and in terms of position. So how would I take this table now to market? It's protected in Namibia. I, for instance, designated it to a few countries. What is the next step in terms of a commercial strategy aspect to take now this product to an international market? Valme and Margaret?
Just before the international, as Vivian was talking about local. So I believe that BIPA is key to our local growth at home strategy.
Very much.
Because now what we're starting to realize, but our growth at home strategy is the one that will empower us to take our products internationally. We're now at the advent of Africa free trade, where you have also mentioned now, if you linkages, that's collaborations with other partners outside of the country. So it is very good now that we understand, because now this, the regional and so forth, it's cutting the cost for the SME. I don't have to travel now, for example, to another country to go and register now in that country under their laws now, because I understand what it is I want to register. So it's cutting the cost for me as part of my research now, because I can just go to one body here. So that is very good for SMEs in because now the leverage we have here is if we can build our local growth at home, then we can actually speak about export. And then we have credibility and we have weight, we have a standpoint to launch our international sales from, because that is where you want to go, you want to sell. So I think that in terms of IP and collaboration, selling through collaboration, as our colleague said, your linkages are very, very important. So non-disclosure agreements, even before you come to BIPA, I think Ms. Vivian mentioned this at the beginning, secrecy. There needs to be, you need to guard and protect yourself also, you know, before you even think about it, that you have a document now that is securing yourself. Thank you.
Margaret, from an international market perspective?
I think it's your strategy will follow how you and when you register it. It depends. If I've built my company in Namibia and now there's no more growth in the country, I put my strategy together and then I decide based on research, as Moses said, where do I want to put my product? Where do I send that product? And then I can either do it with partners, but it depends who I am, what kind of brand have I built over time. There are some people who don't want to work with partners. I want to go to that country, I'll set myself up there, and I'll be there. I'll maybe I have to employ people from that country, and that is the people that will take care of me. And many times what happens is you'll see that they have people that they send. You know, that's why we have immigration laws. You've got people that come and invest in the country, and then they send their people to work there to protect their asset, their brand, and their investment in the country. Number two, on the flip side, just to give an example, we had a company that came to Namibia. They were partnered with a Namibian person here in the country, but a service organization. And what they did is they registered their brand in Namibia. When they met with this guy, they said, we are going into Africa.
Yes.
By the time this Namibian owner came to find out, they had registered their brand in the whole of Africa, in any country, because their plan was, we're going to Africa. So before they even went to open up these doors, so it's almost like it's not a chicken and egg thing. Sometimes register it and then wait. Sometimes I'm ready to go. You know, I mean, I register it as I'm there or whatever the case may be. And I think value is created. I mean, if you look at this, I've created value. So by the time, let's say, I mean, when Coca-Cola comes here, nobody's asking, what is this? You know what I mean? And so many times we create this value here. And let's take, for instance, Batu shoes. I don't know how many of you have heard of Batu shoes. Yes. Here's this guy, South Africa. I mean, he's got the shoe that's being exported, that he's opened. He's like on, I think, shop number 23 in South Africa. Exactly.
I follow him on
exactly. Yeah. He's gonna soon burst out of South Africa and then go to other countries. You know. And then number 2, let's look at Endgame Sportswear from Kenya. But they leverage their running culture, their long distance running. They created the product and now they're selling all over the world. So I guess it just depends, where am I going? What's my strategy? What's my plan? And then put yourself up. But definitely, as was said by Vivian and Moses, you have to register your trademark in these other countries.
So now that we've been international, I mean, it's very interesting. We've been talking about being first, we're talking about research, but we also see now in the global economy, a lot of products and brands that are indeed protected, that have been designated to various countries, are still lifted. So we see a lot of counterfeit products, and it brings me to one of the questions on our stream of enforcement. How do we enforce IP rights in Namibia? Who has the rights? How is it done? What are there loopholes? Are there not loopholes, as has been asked? Please talk us through that, Vivian.
Okay. So with respect to enforcement, normally enforcement starts at our borders. I mean, when you're talking about counterfeit products, for example.
Which again speaks to international markets.
Yeah, so it really has to do with our relationship with our law enforcement officers, which is your customs officials, your normal police persons, and also the judiciary, that the judiciary is set up to deal with cases like that. So we have had some cases. I mean, we had a case of a truck that had cigarettes, there was alcohol, and all these had been intercepted by our customs official, and so and then cases were opened then. But what we normally do, and we did it a year back before COVID now shut down our possibility to engage, is that there are training manuals that, for example, WIPO has developed for your law enforcement agencies. They even come and train our law enforcement agencies on how to determine counterfeits and so on, and how to tackle these issues. So we have had a number of law enforcement officers who've gone through the training. Recently, we gave them the new updated manuals as to what to look out for and how to go about it, even in the areas of copyrights and so on, especially the CDs and these music stuff that are counterfeited like that. So we have that relationship, but from our side is really that if you pick it up, you can report it to the law enforcement agencies, or you can give BIPA an alert or so, and so we work together. We have those relationships where counterfeits are really intercepted, hopefully before they enter the country, but if they enter the country, through the whole system of the customs law enforcement officials. And then, of course, our courts, I think we have a good judicial system where people who commit crimes at least have to account for that.
So it is, in fact, a crime to infringe on someone else's IP rights.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to counterfeits, it is a crime. There are penalties that are in the laws as well, and as well as under your normal Criminal Procedure Act as well.
So there you have heard it. Your IP is indeed protected. So let's quickly talk about, you mentioned NDAs. What is an NDA and how does it apply to the creation of ideas, for instance? NDAs referring to non-disclosure agreements. Let's quickly talk about that. Margaret, sorry. I'm in marketing, you must be dealing with a lot of people coming with proposals, and they've not executed those ideas yet. How do you ensure, as a young entrepreneur, an SME, you have these brilliant ideas, you want to pitch them, you don't have the capital, but you're afraid people will steal your ideas.
I think the non-disclosure agreement is basically a document that you sign that says, whatever I share with you, one, cannot use it for gain, and also you cannot share it then with somebody else. You can't go tell somebody else, hey, friend, I heard, did you see this great idea? You run with it. Then you are infringing actually on the agreement that you signed with whoever shared the information with you. In our industry, we've had a lot of, at least where I came from, we had a lot of that. So even with us, a client, for instance, would say, let's take, for instance, pitching for, say, the BIPA account from a creative point of view, or for strategy and marketing and branding. I mean, I think BIPA should actually sign a non-disclosure agreement with the people who are submitting their proposals to you, because you're going to sit with great ideas. One, Vivian's idea is excellent, Janssen's idea is excellent, and now you almost want to, you're almost, tempted to steal a little bit of Janssen, and a little, just to make your thing, much better. Whereas we can just say, look, I've got this idea, can I use this one, and I'll reimburse you for it. So, I mean, I had an opportunity to actually speak to somebody in Angola, to do something in Angola. And I said to the guy, I want you to sign an NDA. And he's like, no. So I said, well, I'm not sharing anything with you.
Yes.
It's just the way the cookie crumbles. And I think one needs to, and also know that there are lots of people out there who are unscrupulous. They will steal you flat and dry. They have no remorse, no heart for that kind of thing. The answer will be, it's business.
No mercy.
It's business.
But maybe what I would add is that the challenge with the NDAs, they are good if your system is really well set up.
Yeah.
I think with us, as we are setting the IP tribunal, for example, and BIPA itself also has a way where we can mediate and deal with issues that come up. So at least the Act provides for it. The challenge with NDAs is, in order for me to enforce it when a big company, I don't know, a big one, powerful, I don't want to name, if they infringe this agreement, I have to go to the lawyers, I have to bring a case, and it costs money. That's the only really low side of it. Unless in your NDA, you can also provide for mechanisms that of resolving issues without going to court, that you have maybe an arbitrator go through mediation, which is less expensive. So I'm just trying to add on that in your NDA, also make sure that your last resort is not the courts, because it becomes expensive, it takes too long, it doesn't provide the protection that it's needed then. And that's why sometimes it's better to register the IP than to follow through. So that's why you really have to monitor what is the product, at which stage of the process to take the product to the market am I? What role do I play in that sector or industry? That informs you which protection you should pick. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Moses?
And still on the protection part, or rather enforcement, I would say that an effective enforcement mechanism is the one that goes hand in hand with education.
Yeah.
Imagine what we have laid down here. These are ideal situations for IP protection and enforcement. But the reality in our country and other countries that are at our level is that if you look at the police officers, that the new recruits that are being recruited on, it used to be on every 2-3 years. These are people who went up to grade 10, sometimes grade 12. But if all of us sitting here, we probably just know 60% of IP. How do you expect a police officer who just came from Okongo or from, any other further place to understand these things and to enforce it better and help government to actually be effective and successful in enforcement? Education comes in when you tell the enforcer, the law enforcement officers, to say, if you do A, this is what happened to our country. But if you do B, this is what happens. Imagine treating, an example that I always give to people I talk to is, imagine treating a tourist badly. He drops his phone or he drops his wallet and you run away with it.
Yeah.
The next time he wants to visit Africa, he goes to Angola. He goes to Botswana. He goes to a country where he feels at home. It's the same thing with enforcement. You see somebody infringing on a Nike, that Nike logo, the popular one, and you're just quiet. You know that this is not a genuine product.
It's upside down.
It's upside down,
Yes.
or it's written Mikey instead of
Mikey.
and you go ahead and buy it because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
What damage are you doing to your country? Next time, Nike will send strong enforcement team here, or even stop the
Export
exportation
of that
into
rand, yes.
into Namibia.
Yeah.
And what happens? No jobs, the economy is still in the same scale because it's not growing because you are not helping government. At the end of the day, we'll blame government, we'll blame BIPA specifically to say, things are not happening, but you did not play your part. That's why education is very important. Start from there and tell people what happens if you do this. What happens to the country at large.
We have 5 minutes left. Thank you very much for your expertise. I hope our viewers have gotten value throughout this live stream. But when we talk about taking your ideas to market, these might not necessarily only be from SMEs, and I want to divert slightly. Let's talk about instances where inventors, innovators, or entrepreneurs are in a research setting, where they now in a university, or they are under a research grant, or even under employment, and they come up with new and innovative ideas. To what extent are their ideas protected in such a setting? That they will be able to comfortably innovate and still be assured that they can take their idea to market? Or is it a matter of shared IP? Is there something like that, for instance? Let's quickly, in 2 minutes, talk about that.
Thank you. That's a very good question. And speaking from the NCRST point of view, I would say that the advice we should give out today and for the next days to come is that research institutions, your universities, should be the first in line to have what we call institutional IP and knowledge management policies. When I register with that university, those are the things I look at. If I'm a very serious entrepreneur, or if I'm a very serious researcher, I look at those. Do you have a policy in place that will speak to me comfortably and say, once you go out there with a professor and you discover something, maybe you were working on a different research topic, and you stumble upon something that's very, very important in terms of commercialization. You look back at the university where you are studying under or you are researching under and say, do they have a policy in place? What am I in for? So research institutions should come to BIPA, get the national IP policy, and benchmark on that, and have something that protects the researchers, the students, so that they can feel comfortable. Because if you don't have that, you will end up having researchers picking up something during their research activity and not disclose, because they fear that their effort will be in vain. But if they are comfortable, they know that this is protected, I will make something out of this, then you will have a...
Vivian, shortly, does BIPA have a role in that?
Yes, maybe just to give assurance, currently we are working with the main universities. I know with Ndas we are very active, and we are having assistance from WIPO where we are helping them to develop their own IP policies. So the issue is that you have hybrid systems where the university can agree with the inventor that you will share in the profits or you get part, so that the policy would speak to that. But we are helping the universities. I think all of them are asking us to attend to that, so we are available and they can really join this development of IP policies for them.
We've almost come to the end of our discussion today, but I would like us to quickly look at some of the questions from our viewers out there. One question pertains to the Swakopmund Protocol. Lawrence Gebhardt wants to know, is traditional knowledge protected in Namibia as set out in the Swakopmund Protocol?
Yeah, so the Swakopmund Protocol is, it's under the ARIPO member states framework. It's a protocol that was exactly agreed to protect traditional knowledge, but its implementation has not taken effect. Even from the ARIPO perspective is one of the topics that we are discussing to see how can we, what do we need to put in place to give effect to it, because there are certain disagreements that are there with respect to that. And then there are also issues of duplication and traditional knowledge not receiving the same level of recognition in the bigger organizations. So he's right, it's a topic, it's provided for, but its implementation is not where we would want it to see.
Okay.
Yeah, because traditional knowledge in other countries is protected through different means. Others use your copyright mechanism. Others look at issues like geographic indicators and so on. So it becomes a hybrid of many things. But Yeah.
Maybe not a question, but maybe a comment to say that we talked about designation of IP in other countries. How would IP right holders know which countries have actually ratified certain international treaties?
It's available. They just go on the internet. They can go to WIPO. WIPO actually have all the countries. It would tell you which international treaties they've ratified or agreements. And then through that, you'll also see which regional bodies they belong to. And their laws are even there on the website. So it's a very informative. And we have a link on the BIPA website that they can connect to in order to get that information.
Then there's a question from Max Ushona. He wants to know, and I'm yet to understand, could IP custodians in our country perhaps explore nuanced ways to reward creative works and products as a way to boost innovation? We were talking about innovation. Margaret, how do you think we must award innovators to continue innovating? I think that's one thing I wanted us to close with.
I think we spoke about it like as we were preparing it.
Yes.
So I'm happy we can talk about it. There's a bank, a local bank, and I don't want to mention names, but internally they create these innovation hubs to solve problems or solve challenges or solve just how to take the bank forward. So they've got a very clear like purpose, and then they work, everything they do internally is to move the bank to that purpose. So they've got teams together. So if I come up with an idea in that bank, they give me a team. So I'm generally, ideas people are very bad at implementing. They don't have the discipline, or they struggle sometimes to implement the idea. And so they'll put somebody who's a project manager, they'll put a finance person with you, they'll put a marketing person with you to make sure this product gets to market. And whatever revenue is generated from that product, once the bank launches it, you get a certain percentage of it. And I mean, there's people that have gotten like millions just for sharing the idea with the bank. And I think as if we look at corporates, that shared value, that it's not just I'm giving you a great idea and you know the company goes and makes hectic profits and all you get is your salary. Well done, champ. You know, that kind of thing, that doesn't work like that. So I think that shared value, then it will also stimulate the employees working for you to actually be more proactive in fixing and sorting out solutions to take the company even more forward. And then obviously after that, you can always go and implement your own product, but there's value that's
maybe, Margaret, the big companies like your Oldhaven list with Namibia Breweries, these companies that are already out there, hopefully they can create incubation hubs where people can come and incubate, they can fail, they can succeed, but it's the opportunity to start something. And it's good to have that because then you attract recent graduates also who have good ideas. So I think all of us must work together to ensure that we create this environment where people can incubate without a fear of failing and succeeding, and better ideas can even come out of a failed innovation.
Exactly.
yes, and even sorting out our current issues as a country.
Yes, because it's all about creating solutions. Moses?
Yes, I wanted to touch for 30 seconds on the issue of Stockholm Protocol. Our SMEs out there, that this is a good start for them. While we are waiting for the international community, when Namibia is a member, to sort themselves out and address us accordingly under the Stockholm Protocol, we can take advantage of the opportunities that the protocol provides. Look at your traditional way of doing things. Look at your expression of cultural values and say how you can make a living out of that. Nobody will kill you for using a traditional idea or a cultural expression to commercialize it, as long as you add a little bit of value to that, and provided that you are not diverting that value, the traditional value, to something else. You leave it as it is, but you come out with something new that already you have established your client base, because they are used to this. If this is a Namibian traditional way of doing things, why don't I add value looking at innovation elements? What can I do so that people don't look at it and think, no, this is too old-fashioned. It's still your traditional way of doing things. It's still your cultural way of expressing yourself, but you do it in a different way. A practical example, a musician called Tatebuti. I'm sure many people know him. He goes into the hymn book and take out some songs there, and just because most of them are already in the public domain. The owner is no more. 50 years have gone by. And he just take them, and because in church we sing this, but we just sing straight like this. Then he add instrument, straight everything else, and then it becomes something new. You still want to enjoy it, even so it's not on a Sunday, still a hymn song, but there's value created around it. So while we're waiting for the international community to come and save us on this, we can play around with this and commercialize, make a living out of it.
Exactly, and just to touch on that, Vivian, in terms of BIPA, BIPA is currently reviewing the Copyright and Neighboring Rights Protections Act. I think one aspect that came through, if I remember correctly, is the aspect of traditional knowledge, especially folklore such as music, that has been created within the community, to further look at how that can be protected. We also have the Access and Benefit Sharing Act under the Ministry of Tourism that specifically looks at indigenous or traditional knowledge and so forth. So there are some, it probably just speaks to enforcement. Yeah? So in closing, I would quickly like to come to you, Valmey. We were talking about how can we reward innovation. In other countries, such as the US, especially looking at Silicon Valley, we have a lot of big businesses and industries that actually come together and they sponsor these innovation hubs, like everyone has said. Could we see something like that from members of the NCCI? Could that be an idea to say, let's try to innovate? Or what would you say the business community would be able to do to contribute towards innovation in our country?
I believe that the Chamber is an ideal vehicle to boost innovation through the different layers of business. As has been mentioned, small, medium, enterprise, but when we speak business in Namibia, we speak across informal and formal business, from grassroots to corporates. I believe that once a business is registered at BIPA, and they can find themselves to join the Chamber, that we can be a strong body to boost in the form, as Ms. Abinas mentioned, for one that has an environment, it could provide a conducive environment. For one that has an operational, equipment, it could boost to assist that operational equipment. So I believe we could certainly contribute towards the reward of the innovator would be to see my product out there and making the potency of my innovative idea being realized. So I believe we can certainly come to the table.
And I think it's not only limited to domestic investors and domestic businesses, but also international businesses.
True.
And that's why I want to come to you, Margaret. You recently joined the Namibia Innovation Promotion and Development Board. Are we going to see a lot more foreign investment, and especially looking at how they'll be able to give back and leave skills, especially with regards to innovation in the country?
I think as a board, I literally started on the 1st of April. We were actually just busy doing our strategies and what have you. But what I think I can say now is that, yes, we are planning. It's actually the Namibia Investment Promotion and Development Board. And what we want to do is attract investments locally as well as internationally, attract and retain. That's our mandate, attract and retain investments to the country. And I think the whole purpose of that is to develop our economy, to push our economy to the next level. And so I think there are many things that investors want. Some of them want incentives. How do I protect my investment in that country? Some of them want, give me 5 work permits or what have you to bring skills here. So we've got different themes or different sectors that we want to develop as a country. And then within those sectors, there might be areas where we need to develop skills. And so you want to bring in somebody who can develop the skills, and you get them to be here to develop Namibia and develop the skills here so that you can then have a skills base in that area. And then there's the other place as well where you can look at we're investing here so as a manufacturing center where people can come and set up manufacturing hubs that we can start getting product out of the country. So there's a lot of opportunity coming for Namibia, but I think the investment board has really been put together to develop Namibia and to take Namibia to the next level.
That's excellent. Our time is unfortunately up. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Just for our viewers out there, Please note that celebrations continue. Tomorrow is our official event where we will have the Deputy Minister of Industrialization and Trade speaking at the event, as well as the BIPA CEO. If what we have given out an invitation to all SMEs. If you want to exhibit your product or service, you could simply email us at ip@bipa.na to see if there are still spots available. There were only, unfortunately, 20 spots available. But thank you very much for joining us, and see you next time.
Thank you, Albert. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
For an awesome.